Good day, everyone. My name is Janica Lois Brule, and I will be your first speaker for today. We will be discussing about the Republic Act 7877, or which is also known as the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995. We are the group Makakalikasan. We will be your speakers for today. What comes to your mind when you read or hear about the word anti-sexual harassment? Please tune in into our presentation so you may have deeper knowledge about it. This act was declared on the 25th of July of the year 1994 by the Republic of the Philippines. This act prohibits sexual harassment in the workplace, education, training, and other purposes. It was signed by our President Fidel V. Ramos together with the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Philippines in Congress. The first section of this act is the title, which this act shall be known as the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995.
Good day everyone, I am Angela B. Marcelo from Group Makakalikasan and I am here to report Section 2 Declaration of Policy. The state shall value the dignity of every individual, enhance the development of its human resources, guarantee full respect for human rights, and uphold the dignity of workers, employees, applicants for employment, students, or those undergoing training, instruction, or education. Towards this end, all forms of sexual harassment in the employment, education, or training environment are hereby declared unlawful. Sexual harassment is defined as any uninvited sexual behavior that is insulting, embarrassing, or intimidating to others. It also against the law to sexually harass another person. As a result, a policy has been established that any act of sexual harassment is illegal everywhere, including in the workplace, educational or training environments, and for the other purposes. This portion, Section 2, contains the policy declarations, which includes encouraging the development of human resources, ensuring full respect for human rights, and protect the dignity of all individuals. It further explained that any forms of sexual harassment in the workplace, in schools, or in training environment are prohibited. Nobody in this world, man or woman, deserves to be sexually harassed. We all have the right to live freely, free from harassment, bullying, and discrimination. It is for this reason that sexual harassment is unlawful.
Section 3. Work, education, or training-related sexual harassment. Work education or training-related sexual harassment is committed by an employer, employee, manager, supervisor, agent of the employer, teacher, instructor, professor, coach, trainer, or any other person who, having authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over another in a work, or training, or education environment, demands, requests, or otherwise requires any sexual favor from the other, regardless of whatever the demand, request, or requirement for submission is accepted by the object of the said act. In a work-related or employment environment, sexual harassment is committed when the sexual favor is made as a condition in the hiring or in the employment, reemployment, or continued employment of said individual, or in granting said individual favorable compensation, terms of condition, promotions, or privileges, or the refusal to the grant of sexual favor results, in limiting, segregating, or classifying the employee, which in any way would discriminate, deprive of diminished employment opportunities, or otherwise adversely affect said employee. The above acts would impair the employee's rights or privileges under existing labor laws. The above acts would result in intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the employee. In an education or training environment, sexual harassment is committed against one who is under the care, custody, or supervision of the offender, against one whose education, training, apprenticeship, or tutorship is entrusted to the offender. When the sexual favor is made a condition to the giving of a passing grade, or then granting of honors and scholarships, or the payment of a stipend, allowance, or other benefits, privileges, or consideration. When the sexual harassment advances result in an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the student, trainee, or apprentice. Any person who directs or indicates another to commit any act of sexual harassment as herein defined, or who cooperates in the commission thereof by another without which it would not have been committed, shall also be held liable under this act. Let's now proceed to the illustrative forms of sexual harassment. The three forms of sexual harassment are physical, verbal, and non-verbal. But first, let me introduce to you the physical harassment. Physical forms of sexual harassment such as any unwanted contact, ranging from intentionally touching, cursing, pinching, hugging, or kissing to sexual assault or rape. Verbal harassment is verbal forms to sexual harassment include and culturally inappropriate and unwelcome comments with sexual overtones such as sexually suggestive jokes or comments about person's dress or body, made in their presence or directed toward them. They also include persistent proposals and unwelcome requests or persistent personal invitations to go out. Nonverbal harassment is nonverbal forms of sexual harassment include unwelcome gestures, suggested body language, indecent exposure, repeated winks, and gestures with fingers. It also includes the unwelcome display of pornographic materials, sexually explicit pictures and objects, screensavers or posters, as well as sexually explicit emails, notes, or Sims messages. And the last is the classification of sexual harassment. The grave offenses, less grave offenses, and light offenses. But first, let's tackle the grave offenses. Grave offenses shall include but are not limited to unwanted touching of private parts of the body like genitalia, buttocks, and breasts, sexual assault, malicious touching, requesting for sexual favor in exchange for employment, promotion, local or foreign travels, favorable working conditions, or assignments, a passing grade, the granting of honors or scholarship, or the grant of benefits or payment of a stipend or allowance, and other analogous cases. The second one is the less grave offenses shall include but are not limited to unwanted touching or brushing against a victim's body, pinching not falling under grave offenses, derogatory or degrading remarks, or innuendos directed toward the members of one sex or one sexual orientation, or used to describe a person, verbal abuse with sexual overtones and other analogous cases. Lastly, the light offenses that surreptitiously looking or staring a look of person's private part or worn undergarments, telling sexist or smutty jokes, or sending this through text, electronic mail, or other similar means, causing embarrassment or offense and carried out after the offender has been advised that they are offensive or embarrassing, or even without such advice when they are their nature clearly embarrassing, offensive or vulgar, malicious, leering or ugly. The display of sexually offensive pictures, materials, or graffiti, unwelcome inquiries or comments about person's sex life, unwelcome sexual flirtation, advances propositions, making offensive hand or body gestures at an employee, persistent unwanted attention with sexual overtones, unwelcome phone calls with sexual overtones, causing discomfort, embarrassment, offense, or insult to the receiver, and other analogous cases.
Section 4. Duty of the employer or head of office in a work-related education or training environment. It shall be the duty of the employer or the head of the work-related, educational, or training environment or institution to prevent or deter the commission of acts of sexual harassment. The duty of the employer or the head office is to prevent the occurrence of sexual harassment acts and to provide the procedures for the resolution, settlement, or prosecution of sexual harassment. Towards this end, the employer or head of office shall A. Promulgate appropriate rules and regulations in consultation with and jointly approved by the employees or students or trainees. Through their duly designated representatives, said rules and regulations shall prescribe the procedures for the investigation of sexual harassment cases and the administrative sanctions thereon. B. Create a committee on decorum and investigation of cases on sexual harassment. The committee shall conduct meetings or as the case may be with officers and employees, teachers, instructors, professors, coaches, trainers, and students or trainees to increase understanding and prevent incidents of sexual harassment. It shall also conduct investigation of alleged cases instituting sexual harassment. Section 5. Liability of the employer, head of office, educational or training institution. The employer or head of office, educational or training institution shall be solidarily liable for damages arising from the acts of sexual harassment committed in the employment, education, or training environment if the employer or head of office, educational or training institution is informed of such acts by the offended party and no immediate actions is taken thereon. The employer or head of office, educational or training institution will be held liable for the damages arising from acts of sexual harassment if they are informed by the offended party of the occurrence of such acts yet no action has been undertaken.
Good day, I am Bresel Dimple Villapando and we will discuss the Section 6, which is Independent Action for Damages. Nothing in this act shall preclude the victim of work, education, or training-related sexual harassment from instituting a separate and independent action for damages and other affirmative relief. Let's forward in Section 7, which is penalties. Commission of sexual harassment is a criminal offense. A person found guilty of sexual harassment shall be penalized by imprisonment of not less than 1 month nor more than 6 months, or a fine of not less than 10,000 pesos nor more than 20,000 pesos, or both. Any person who directs or induces another to commit any act of sexual harassment or who cooperates in the commission thereof by another without which it would not have been committed, shall also be held liable under for sexual harassment. Damages resulting from sexual harassment may be separately and independently instituted. In fact, the employer or head of office, educational or training institute shall be solidarily liable for damages arising from the acts of sexual harassment committed in the employment, educational or training environment if the employer or head of office, educational or training institute is informed of such acts by the offended party and no immediate action is taken.
Hi, my name is John Emil Midelbrin and my assigned task is Section 8 Separability Clause. If any portion or provision of this act is declared void or unconstitutional, the remaining portion or provision hereof shall not be affected by such declaration. While Section 9 Repealing Clause is all about all laws, decrees, order, rules, and regulation, other issuance, or parts thereof inconsistent with provision of this act are hereby repealed.
Good day, everyone. I'm Juliana Alex Conopio, and I'll be tackling about Section 10 Effectivity Clause of Anti-Sexual Harassment of 1995, are also known as Republic Act 7877. So this act shall take effect 15 days after its complete publication in at least two national newspaper of general circulation. So yung batas na ito is magkakabisa lamang siya 15 araw matapos itong ganap na mailathala sa hindi bababang 2 pambansang pahayagan ng pangkahalatang sirkulasyon. So all complaints for sexual harassment must under oath and supported by the affidavit of the offended party. So yung lahat ng reklamo para sa sexual harassment is dapat nasa ilalim ng panunupa at suportado ng affidavit ng nasaktang partido o yung offended na individual. So anumang reklamo ay dapat ini-investigate or dispose accordance with the uniform rules of procedure in the conduct of administrative investigation in the Civil Service Commission. So, Republic Act number 7877 and Guidelines, page 13. So, sinasabi din is wala action na dapat gawin sa isang hindi kilalang reklamo at hindi dapat kailanganin ng sinumang sibil na sumagot o magkomento sa nasabing hindi kilalang reklamo. So, here are some questions regarding anti-sexual harassment. So what is the duty of the employer in a work of education, training, environment, and if the employer did not undertake any action despite his her knowledge of the Sexual Harassment Act? So yung batas na ito is nag-aatas sa employer or pinuno ng opisina na ipagbawal ang sexual na panliligalig at magbigay ng mga proseso para sa paglutas, pag-aayos o pag-uusig ng mga paghahabol sa sexual harassment. Para sa layuning iyon, ang employer o yung pinuno ng opisina ay dapat magpahayag ng angkop na mga tuntunin o yung regulations sa pagsangguni at sa pag-aproba ng mga empleyado, mag-aaral, or trainees sa pamamagitan ng kanilang napiling mga kinatawan. Ang mga paraan para sa pagsisiyasat ng mga paratang na sexual na panliligalig, pati na rin ang administratibong kahihitnan ng maaaring itataw ay itinakda sa naturang mga patakaran at regulations. At kung ipapaalam ng nasaktan na tao sa employer o yung pinuno ng opisina o institusyon, pang-edukasyon o pagsasanay ng paglitaw ng mga naturang gawain, ngunit walang ginawang aksyon, mananagot yung employer o yung pinuno ng opisina, institusyong pang-edukasyon o pagsasanay para sa pinsalang dulot ng naturang kilos. Can an offender party seek redress by taking independent action? So, yes, ang insultong partido ay may karapatang magdemanda para sa pinsalang natamo bilang gawain o yung resulta ng gawain ng sexual na panliligalig or sexual harassment. Maaari rin siya maging karapat-dapat para sa tulong. So, what are the penalties for offenders? Ang sinumang lumabag sa batas ay sasailalim sa sentensyang ng pagkakulong ng hindi bababa sa 1 buwan o higit sa 6 na buwan. Or magmumulta siya sa hindi bababang 10,000 piso at hindi hihigit sa 20,000 piso or 20,000 o pareho sa pagpapasya ng korte. Ang anumang aksyon na nagmula sa isang paglabag sa probisyon ng batas na ito ay dapat gawin sa loob lamang ng 3 taon. So, what to do if you're being sexually harassed? Iulat ang insidente sa naangkop na authority. Kung walang aksyon na ginawa, makipag-ugnayan na sa pulis. Ang mga kababaihan ay hindi dapat obligadong magtiis ng sexual na panliligalig o yung sexual harassment bilang isang conditions ng pagpasok sa isang political na buhay at profession. So where do we go for help? So saan nga baga tayo pwede makahingi ng tulong once na may mag-harass sa atin? So pwede sa Civil Service Commission, sa Department of Labor and Employment, sa Philippine National Police and National Bureau of Investigation. So before we end this session, is I want to leave a short quote lang about sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is not a compliment or a joke. It is a crime. Thank you.
At this juncture, we would like to discuss on how to stop sexual harassment. The first one is understand the meaning of sexual harassment. You must understand what sexual harassment is, since sometimes a person is unaware that he or she is engaging in it. Unwanted jokes, gestures, insulting words on clothes, and unpleasant statement to a specific individuals are examples. Following that, there will be frequent requests for dates that will be declined, as well as unwanted flirting. Also, sending or uploading emails or photographs containing sexual or other harassment related content. The second one is to raise awareness, because not all the people around you is aware on this kind of things. They think that sexual harassment is normal. So we need to take actions for them to know this kind of things. Example of raising awareness is to use social media for more people to be aware of it, and since social medias are now easy to access. Next is to report any concerns about sexual harassment immediately. If you believe someone in your life has acted improperly against you, or if you have concerns about other individuals, express them immediately. Your barangays or government policy should emphasize the significance of confidentiality so that you may express your concerns without fear of consequences.
Thank you, Ms. Enriquez. Hi, I am Shane Hertkorendang, the last speaker of this presentation. The third one is to hold sexual harassers accountable. A considerable number of injustices pertaining sexual harassments occurs every year, and most of the offenders are able to freely walk outside. This is due to society instilling fear to every victims of sexual harassment, that they lack the confidence to speak up. There is also inequality when it comes to judgment to the suspects. For instance, some prominent sexual harassers are powerful and influential, and they use these characteristics to escape their sentences. Making sure that we hold these sexual harassers accountable means that we can inspire victims to speak up and stand up against their harassers, which will ultimately lessen sexual harassments and give the victims the justice and the harassers the punishment they deserve. Lastly, we have to campaign for the implementation of the new and improved bills and policies against sexual harassments. With improved ruling, law will be more effective in sentencing and punishing the harassers. With the eyes of the law firmly against this kind of crime, it would be easier for victims to prove the inhumane acts done to them, and for the suspects to stay in jail. With these steps, I hope that we can lessen, if not eradicate entirely, the part of the world that is full of untold stories of sexual harassments. That is all. Thank you.
I hope you have learned something important, and thank you for listening.